All right, good morning. This presentation today will cover the modifications to the statewide standard citation version 2019.1 that becomes required for use as of January 1st, 2020. The intended audience are law enforcement agencies, e-citation vendors, and any interested court staff. This presentation will be recorded, and the recording and PowerPoint slides will be available on the public website along with other resources. We will show you how to get to the new citation information on the website at the end of our presentation. For court staff attending today, you are eligible to receive education credit for this class. However, please keep in mind it may take up to 2 weeks before the credit for this class is marked as complete in Cornerstone. As a reminder, there will be a question and answer session at the conclusion of this WebEx, but feel free to use the chat feature at any time to ask your questions. My name is Janelle Tupi. I'm the supervisor of the Citation Entry Unit for the Minnesota Court Payment Center, and I will be your presenter today. We have Chris Wilkins, Jeff Hoke, Karen Jaszewski, and Troy Woltman, who will be available to help answer questions at the end of the presentation. Here is a summary of the topics we will be covering today. We will discuss the relationship to child field, removal of the booked indicator, addition of the fingerprinted and defendant in custody checkboxes, the addition of species number and wildlife restitution fields, as well as changed wording regarding when the 30 days start for the defendant. We will also discuss changes to the Court Payment Center information on the back of the citation, as well as juvenile court designation information. Relationship to child. The addition of the relationship to child data element is for juvenile citation processing and notification. This data is entered manually into MNCIS, except in Hennepin County where juvenile e-citations are submitted electronically. We are removing the booked indicator from the citation involvement, since the citation template will now have a separate checkbox for defendant in custody. Of the remaining 5 involvement codes available on the list displayed, you will want to pick the first option that applies and do not mark more than 1 involvement code. The fingerprinted box should only be checked if you know for certain that the defendant was fingerprinted for the offenses on the citation. The purpose of this checkbox, the defendant in custody checkbox, is to allow e-citations with this designation to have a higher priority for timely processing. Integrations will then add the MNCIS event, citation e-filed in custody, to the case in MNCIS. Local courts can run MNCIS reports to find these cases and schedule for a bail hearing. It is okay if you check the defendant in custody box and then sometime before the scheduled bail hearing, the defendant gets released from custody, which can happen for various reasons. We added a field for species number as well as wildlife restitution so that if a non-Department of Natural Resource agency issues a citation and they are charging someone with an offense where it is required to indicate the number of animals or number of lines over, and then a wildlife restitution fee, if applicable, then this information can be collected on the citation template. We currently have a specialized template for the Department of Natural Resources, but now have it added to the general template for availability for all law enforcement agencies. Next, we modified the language around when the citation must be paid or appeared by so that it is clear that the 30 days does not start until a citation has been filed with the court. This hopefully will make it more clear to the defendant when some citations take a little bit longer to get into the system that the clock for them to act won't officially start until it is available in MnSys. We updated the version from 2017.1 to 2019.1, and there are a few updates to the language on the back of the citation to add clarity on how the defendant can visit the public website to find out how much they owe for the citation. Additionally, we added the pay in person information, stating that if the defendant wants to pay their citation in person, they must do so by going to the county listed at the top of the citation to pay in person. We have had problems in the past where the defendant believes that they can go to the accounting office in Willmar, Minnesota to pay in person a citation that was issued to them anywhere. This is not correct, as they can only pay their Candy, Ohio citations at the Willmar office in person. If the citation is a juvenile court offense, we added more language to guide the defendant on how to determine that by seeing if there is a checkbox on the front of the citation. If there is, we tell the defendant that they can call the CPC at the number above. Otherwise, they should receive further information and instructions via U.S. mail. This concludes our overview of changes to the statewide standard citation. We'd also like to remind you that resources about the statewide standard citation and these upcoming changes are available on the court's website. I will be displaying my personal desktop to show you how to locate the information from the minnesotacourts.gov website. So here we are on the minnesotacourts.gov website. You will click on the Government Partners section. Then from there, you will select Criminal Justice System Resources. And about halfway down, you will see Statewide Standard Citation. On this page, we provide hyperlinks to the actual citation template, a document that goes over the data elements for the adult juvenile citations, the actual communication that was emailed out to the Justice Partners in July, an edited version of the 2017 template to show what changes are made on the 2019 version. We have a document that goes over instructions to consider when ordering paper citations with the new template. We have a frequently asked questions document, as well as a guide that gives information regarding the citation fields. Lastly, we have in the archive section the ability to review the previous version and those documents. Our plan is to also have the recorded session from this WebEx added to the content on the public website for playback if needed. At this time, we would like to hear from you. Please use the chat feature on the WebEx screen to ask your questions, as we have our panelists listening in to help us answer any questions. Okay, looks like I have a question. When will the new changes be available in the test environment at MNCIS? The changes that are being made to this version do not have any schema changes. We're essentially, with the addition of the defendant in custody checkbox and the fingerprinted checkbox, those were previously added to the court schema a while back. So you're free to test these changes. I believe the BCA has indicated that they will have the changes made in their system sometime end of November. If there's vendors or agencies that want to do some testing. Is that correct, Troy?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
That's correct.
Second question, what is the earliest we can start sending citations with these changes to production at MNCIS? Again, there are no schema changes for these updates being made to the template, so you could actually start submitting the new template immediately. It does not become required for use until January 1st, 2020. Then next question, what is the latest we can send citations with these changes to MNCIS? Okay, so yeah, January 1st, 2020 is when we would want to have everyone using the new template. There is usually a length of time when the last version is sunsetted. Historically, this is 6 months. I don't think we've really discussed when we would be sunsetting these changes.
Yeah, we've always given just a 6-month window as far as when the changes were being made, but as far as for the implementation date, we've always stated that the date that the citation becomes active is the date that we expect the change to be made by, and that would be January 1st of 2020.
Thanks, Chris. Then there's a question to confirm. all agencies will need to remove booked from the ticket writer software and replace it with in custody.
Yes, that'd be correct. It'd be a template change.
Next question, will MNCIS have a process to reset the fingerprinted flag to false in MNCIS if an agency incorrectly submits a citation with fingerprinted?
No, it would not be an automated process. It would require manual entry by court staff.
Okay, so far I've gotten through the list of questions that I've seen in the chat box, unless if there's any additional ones that anyone has after hearing the responses to the previous questions.
And this is Troy from the BCA. I'm always available and willing to answer questions as well if you think of anything after. My email is troy.waltman@state.mn.us. I think for any further questions, etc.
Let's see. There's a question, who updates ticket writer? That would be the e-citation vendors would be responsible to update their ticket writers. Then there's a request for me to go back to the defendant in custody slide. So let me just go back to that. So the defendant in custody checkbox, it identifies if defendant is being held in custody for a court appearance. It allows for higher priority level for processing more timely ahead of the parking citations, etc. A MNCIS event of citation e-filed in custody is added when this box is checked, and it's acceptable if the defendant happens to be released prior to the scheduled bail hearings the following day. And Nate from HCHIP just wanted to say that, you know, any vendors for Hennepin agencies can contact him for testing. Thanks, Nate. Any other questions, or is there any additional questions around the defendant in custody after I went back to the slide? And I'll just repeat that this PowerPoint presentation will be added to the statewide standard citation content on the public website if you need to go back and look through it after today's WebEx. Otherwise, I do have one more slide. And that's just, you know, as a reminder, court staff can receive training credits in Cornerstone for their attendance of this WebEx session, but it may take up to 2 weeks for your transcript to be updated. Also, if after this WebEx you have additional questions regarding the citation template or have any suggested changes for the next version of the standard citation, please feel free to send them to the email address above for the statewide standard citation work group. Thank you for attending this WebEx presentation. Oops, sorry. I'm seeing one more question that just came in. What happens if your vendor is unable to update your ticket by January 1st, 2020? If you can reach out to us and maybe let us know so that we're aware of which agencies this would impact. But our hope is that this can be done as quickly as possible. And one more question. Can the defendant in custody be checked manually if it was submitted without it checked accidentally? No.
Yeah.
But you would want to notify the court if that needs to be updated. Let's see. It looks, okay, this is from Hennepin County H. Chip. It looks like booked is still on the printout next to driver, owner, passenger, citee, parked, booked. I'll take a peek at that, Nate. I thought it was removed on the website, unless it's an older version got added there accidentally, but I'll take a peek at that. It should be removed as an involvement code. Let's see, just making sure there's. Is it okay to use old paper citations as long as we are still electronically filing the citation? We would rather that old citations be discarded and the current version would be used. Okay, I'll just put a last call out there for any additional questions. Otherwise, as indicated, you can send any email questions to the Statewide Standard Citation email address, and we will promptly respond. Okay, thank you. This will be the end of the WebEx.